Hi, Garrett. How are you?
Hello, sorry I'm late. I'm
You're
good.
not late. You're on time.
Well, I remembered late that we were talking
Yeah,
about logging on 10 minutes early, but I think as we just discussed, we're not too worried about that, I don't think. So,
yeah.
yeah. How are you all?
Ready to take a nap.
Yeah, it is late on a Friday afternoon. So,
You know what? Let me just turn on my fan and then we can get started. Because I'm realizing like the heat comes into my room like at this time and I'm like, I'm getting hot. Okay, be right back. Okay. So do y'all want to get started? Dorian, did you want to say anything before? I know that I did a little, I don't know, welcome and housekeeping, but do you want to welcome me?
Okay. Well, happy Friday, everybody. We want to welcome Caro from CalWalks for doing this presentation today. We know she's very, very busy, and we really appreciate her taking the time right now to train us on this photo voice, which we really need to know about for our task. So if you have questions, you could type it in the chat or unmute yourself, but we will now let Caro begin.
Thank you, Dorian. Yeah, I would say, like, especially since it's just us, like, feel free to actually unmute yourself because I won't even see the chat because I'll be sharing my screen. So I hope you can see it. Yes, perfect. Okay, so like what Dorian said, we are in part doing this training because this is developing photo video voices is among the tasks for SAS for the Focus Cities work that they're subcontracting with us to do. So we wanted to just make sure that folks are aware of really what this is and how to get started with this tool. I'm going to go over like what it is and what are some things that you might need to prepare for it. And then we'll go through some examples that I hope kind of show you that you don't have to be perfect at this. Yeah, so the training goals are to learn about how and why to use photo video voice and to brainstorm your own photo video voice. You will do that with Alma. It'll just be kind of an opportunity for you to share out thoughts based on what you learned. I don't expect it to take long. And here, as you can see, hopefully on this page, you can see that this is funded through our collaborative efforts, us, California Walks, UC Berkeley SafeTrek, and OTS, the California Office of Traffic Safety, through a federal grant. So we're always very appreciative of that and their continued support for our Focus Cities efforts, of which Santa Ana is one of our 7 focus cities. Okay, so the first thing, this is a question that I've seen Alma ask before. So I was like, I gotta ask that one. And I promise that it's related to the topic. So the question, so here's the situation, okay? There is something that you really want to do with your friends, but you need to ask a parent or guardian for permission. You know them really well, and you think they might say no. So what steps would you take to convince them to give you permission? So if any of you want to share, don't be shy. This could come actually from lived experience or not. I was not a cool kid, so I never went out. So this does not apply to me. But I'm sure you all were really cool. So maybe you have some lived experiences from which you can pull from. So what do you all think? What would be some steps that you would take or did take to convince a parent or guardian to give you permission?
So I have an amusing example that I think is pretty parallel. But when I was a little kid, we had a Game Boy, right? A little like Game Boy that we would like play on like car trips or whatever. And I wanted the game, the Pokemon trading card game for the Game Boy, right? Just some random game, and it was like $30. And to me, this was like a really big deal, and I really wanted it. And so I like wrote out by hand an essay making the arguments to my parents about like why this would be like a good like purchase. And I like justified like the cost, like this will entertaining us on a car trip will like otherwise cost like this much, or be like this much expenditure of time. So actually like it's a good cost, and also like, made the case like this is, it's been this much time since we last bought one of these games, we won't, so this will like last a certain amount of time. So basically, like, my parents are both engineers. So I knew I needed to make like a logical case for them. And so I did my best to try to like make this logical case, like why this was like a good purchase at like the right price at like the right time. So that's what steps I took. And I don't know if that's similar or different to other people, but
it's great. Can I ask, what was the result? Did you get what you wanted?
Yeah, we did get it. And I think my parents were really rather impressed. I don't think they cared about the arguments. I think they cared about the effort, frankly, in writing into this essay. I think it will also be unsurprising that the game itself was extremely disappointing, and we spent very little time playing it. So inevitably, right? The thing you want so much is not actually that good. But they were impressed with the effort.
Welcome to my life. Thank you for that, Garrett. Anyone else want to share an example or how you would do it if you had a chance to do that now?
So I'm the firstborn woman of immigrant parents. So I lived a very strict life. And so asking for permission to go out was a mission, like a real intense. There's probably trauma around there, but that's another point. But I think like one of the things that I had to do like every time I wanted to go out was I had to know all of the details ahead of time. So Garrett did like like the essay, but I think part of like that is like having all of these talking points, right? And all of these like, well, what if this, like having scenarios for all these like backups to different scenarios, knowing what I wanted to do like really well, and like who I was gonna go with, what time I was planning on coming back, like if I needed a ride, who was gonna take me, if there was money involved, like how much. So like knowing details, right? And understanding like what it is that I wanted to do. So it wasn't, I couldn't just go in and be like, hey, I want to go out with my friend. It would have to be like a whole plan to it.
Yeah. Dorian and Chris, did you want to share? It's okay if you don't. Just wanted to give you both the opportunity if you wanted to share.
I can say something. Well, I also grew up in a immigrant home, but my parents split up when I was young, and then after that, like I didn't really have a lot of parental authority. Like they both kind of did their own thing, and so I didn't really have rules. Like I could pretty much do whatever I wanted. Like nobody was really regulating me, so I never really had to ask for permission for anything. I kind of just did it but I was a very responsible young person, and maybe I was a traviesa sometimes, but I was responsible. And so like, you know, I listened to people say that they had a strict home, but I never really had that issue with me. Like my parents trusted me, and I don't know. But if I did have to convince a parent, I would just try to keep like a good record, like prior to what I really wanted, like just be on my best behavior, or like be really helpful around the house, and just kind of like show like I have a good track record before what I really want, just to kind of say, well, I haven't been doing anything bad, so I should be able to go.
Yeah. So what I'm hearing from all of you, Chris, go.
Yeah, well, I was a travieso, so I wasn't really convincing, more as I was just straight up lying to get what I needed to do. Just, it's like, wait, why am I going to tell them something? No, I'm going to tell them this, and I'm going to do what I want. So, so I didn't really do much convincing in my life. But I don't recommend to do that ever, children, if any children hear this in the future. But
Your children are going to hear this in the future, and they're going to be like, what?
I was not a good role model in high school, not at all. But I think, yeah, I think most of, like, I guess the convincing, like I can kind of vaguely remember, I would just always try to like kind of create some like good argument about doing it. I'd always work to their like working class kind of mentality. So like even my first job, I was a paper boy at like 12, 13 years old. I was like, look, I'm going to be able to get this money, and you're not going to have to give me an allowance, and I'm going to be able to provide for myself. And all I got to do is work on Sundays. So if you let me do this, like, you don't have to worry about me like asking for money, like, and I can learn how to manage it. So I would like try to rationalize it in a way where it's like it was a benefit to me, and hide all the selfishness that was attached to it. It's like they didn't know I was getting hot Cheetos all the time, but you know, I was like, but I was
Oh, those hot
providing my
Cheetos.
hot Cheetos, huh?
I said, oh, those hot Cheetos with like
Mhm.
that cheese that you dipped in. Oh, wow. All right. Well, thank you all so much for that. What I heard in almost all of that was that you all did research, and you all were prepared in like kind of like what to do with that research. So it was like developing an argument, right? Developing a convincing argument, developing a logical argument in the way that Garrett said, or, you know, writing a letter. So again, you did research and you were prepared. So I asked this question because one way to think of a photo video voice project is that it is a tool to describe people's experiences, to communicate perspectives, to raise awareness of safety issues impacting communities, and or safety issues that you'd like to change, and that where you might need to convince someone of something that you need to do. Okay, so that's why I asked that question. So again, this is a definition of what a photo video voice project is to us here at California Walks. And so why would you ever use this tool? So to create opportunities for self-advocacy, to have community control over the image and story of your community and neighborhood. That's really important to us, right? To make sure that folks on the ground are sharing their own stories with their own words and their own lived experience. And tied to that is to make sure that diverse perspectives are heard. So that's why we love photo video voices. So let's say you're going to do this, okay, which in this case you are. What would you do? So that we've kind of have broken it down into the how. So this is the how. We went through the what, the why. Now this is the how. and we're offering you some steps. So how do I implement this project? So step one, assess. Similar to what you all kind of did, like gathering gathering information. So you assess. You want to assess the community interest. Do folks around you even want to do this? And issues or programs that the community may want to highlight. So I know this is really basic, really simple, but this is what we identify as step one. And I see step two is kind of being very similar to step one. So if you've assessed that folks do want to move forward, then you get into step two, which is you identify the purpose and goals of creating a photo voice and a video voice project. You want to identify diverse community leaders and groups to participate. Again, sharing out the importance of having various voices. And you want to identify the technology resources. So in terms of what you need, it's probably easiest now for us, like in our general lifetime, to use smartphones, but you can use a tablet, you can use a laptop, you can even use video recorders. We would probably recommend using a smartphone, especially for you all staff that will be moving forward with this. If you do either, if you do a video or photo voice. And then we ask that you identify resources like a community organization that can train residents on how to create their projects. And I think on here I had identify folks who might be able to edit. Of course, you can edit your own work as well. This isn't professional level work, and I'm going to be sharing with you some examples of that. Step 3. So you're moving forward with this, now you're doing it. So the first thing you need to do if you're launching this project is you're training residents on how to develop the project. Within that, you will train residents on general public speaking, more so how to just make some points so you can advance what you're trying to share. And I think that you all already have some experience in that. It's relatively simple. And you train residents or partners with an organization. Oh, this is where I had the editing of photos, videos. Again, no one externally needs to be editing anything. That could be on your end, but I understand that some people have, I don't know, like some people maybe are better at that or more interested in doing that. So just kind of want to acknowledge that that's a type of task that you can also like give someone else to do. So when your project is complete, we would recommend, this is what we do, the intent, and just to be really transparent, we tend to usually use photo video voice projects in tandem with our policy work. So we would recommend that even if, let's say, you don't want to call it advocacy, you can think of a photo video voice project as an educational tool. You're just making someone aware of what's happening in your community, and not only what's happening, but sometimes you even provide some solutions, some suggestions that you have seen have worked in other places or that you think might work. So, okay, so I'm going to share with you 3 examples. And well, let's see, I'll read this off first. It said, okay, so the first example will be from a walk bike youth leader, Celia Gonzalez, who details new and needed infrastructure along Broadway between Stockton Boulevard and Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard in Sacramento, California. This is a 5-lane road with a few recently installed hawk lights, which Celia shows in the video, and yet the community still lacks adequate crosswalks, medians, and bike lanes. So I'm going to share that video with you all now. Do y'all have any questions? before I start sharing with you examples? No? Okay. Okay, can you see the video? Yeah, okay. All right, I'm gonna start playing it. Please tell me if you don't hear anything, because I just shared my sound.
This is the segment of Broadway between Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard and Stockton Boulevard. This section of Broadway has around 7,000 cars that pass through it every day, and around 700 pass through it during the morning peak hours. There are 11 blocks between Stockton Boulevard and MLK Jr. Boulevard, which feature destinations for residents like the American Legion High School, a health clinic, a park, a grocery store, 2 shopping centers, 2 churches, and an elderly housing complex. The 51 bus follows this corridor of Broadway, and it takes residents from South Sacramento to downtown. There's around 4,700 weekday boardings of that bus route. Recently, the city of Sacramento installed a couple of hawk lights down this corridor between Broadway and Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, and what happens is when someone wants to cross the street, they press a button that will temporarily stop traffic for them to safely cross. It tells cars to yield and then to fully come to a stop. It holds that red light for them to safely stop, for them to safely cross, and then the cars can go again. While these new hawk lights and sidewalks are an awesome improvement for pedestrian safety, there's a lot more that can be done. Bikers often use the sidewalks instead of the roads or the bike lanes that exist because for half of the corridor there are no bike lanes, and for the other half it's just a thin line next to traffic. This section of Broadway could benefit from a road dye that would take the 4 to 5 lanes down to 2 with a dedicated turning lane to keep traffic flowing. This section of Broadway could also benefit from pedestrian safe haven medians for places in the road where pedestrians can't walk all the way to the next crosswalk but need to cross safely and have a safe haven while traffic moves fast past them.
So tell me what you thought about that video. It's okay if it's, deltas. Because this is part of the conversation to anyways, I'll just let you tell me what you think.
It really I love the ambient sound, and even just like the kind of flybys you kind of got to see, like just it really kind of felt like it put you into the space. So I think it was really great to still be able to hear her and also still kind of be intertwined with the ambient sound. Yeah, the images kind of shared a lot. So video is always really great for that. So that's kind of the stuff that kind of popped out when I was looking at that.
Thank you, Chris. Is there anyone else? Something else you want to add to that, to what you saw and heard?
Yeah, I think it did a good job. This sort of referencing what we discussed with the icebreaker, but did a good job of mixing, data and, like number of cars that pass through with experiences and, and the thing that's irreplaceable, like the real point of the video voice is showing like the cyclist on the sidewalk, showing like how difficult it would be for cyclists or how hazardous it would be for the cyclists fit between the bus and the curb. So I thought it was a really effective combination of sort of strategies to argue. And I think it was also good because it hypothetically, if presented to an elected official or an agency representative, it's showing hey, there's a good thing right here. There are good things. We're recognizing there are good things. We're also recognizing the improvements. And so that's always a really helpful balance to have as well.
Yeah, it's true. Anyone else?
Yeah, I like how she did have examples of a cycler on the sidewalk and then people crossing the street and then the bus being very close to the sidewalk as well, showing that a cycler might not feel safe right there. And yeah, the sound is a little bad, but I think when you watch it, it kind of enhances the feeling of the street not feeling safe, super fast and cars zooming by. So in that sense, it helped the video.
Yeah. So I agree with all of you. I'm taking notes on what you're saying. I agree with all of you, and I did want to show you that one. So we have quite a few on California Walks YouTube channel. What? We have a YouTube channel? We do. And this is in our YouTube channel. It's called Broadway Safety Changes. Well, and I hope that you all have that link. I think I shared it with you all. And the reason why I chose this one was because I'm having trouble hearing. Like, I need to go to the doctor. But the point is that I liked, just like what Dorian said, even though it was difficult to hear, it really gave me the sense of, oh, wow, that's what it's like to walk there. Like, it's loud, cars are fast. And I think that this is something that, like, I think we actually shared with SAS in one of our previous, I don't know, TA sessions, Garrett and I, we kind of shared out what it's like to get to do walk bike assessments in a virtual setting. And one of the things we said is the limitation to that is that we don't get to walk the space with the community. And so that's why, yeah, seeing a video gives you even more of that, because you can hear it rather than just looking at it in Google Maps. So again, I wanted you to see that because I think she shares a lot. The sound quality isn't the best, but I really think it works in her favor. This is the point she's trying to make. And I wouldn't say this is like a Hollywood production, and that's okay. So I wanted to share that example with you all. I'm going to show you another example that's in Spanish. It's a video. And then the third example I will share with you is a photo video project, because I want to recognize that both of these are video. Let me make sure I'm sharing my sound. Perfect. Okay. Let me know if you can hear.
Sí, buenas tardes a todos ustedes. Estamos aquí en Termo, California. Queremos enseñarle una poco parte de nuestra comunidad. Tenemos aquí un centro recreativo que es parqueadero de Oasis, o mejor conocido como Thermal también, que está ubicado aquí por la Pierce en Termo, y queremos que vean pocas cosas que necesitamos. No estamos pidiendo mucho, estamos pidiendo cosas que necesitamos, como si queremos ver qué tenemos por acá, que necesitamos cosas que cualquier persona necesita en la comunidad para que pueda hacer algo próspero para la familia, en este caso como los hijos, que por ejemplo en las noches, estos días que se oscurece muy temprano, el bus viene y los deja y se hace noche, entonces no pueden, los niños, está oscuro, caminan por este pedazo, esta área que está oscura por acá. Entonces necesitamos un poquito más de luz, necesitamos un poquito que nos apoyaran para que vean qué está pasando en este área que necesitamos, porque es importante, cómo nos afecta, que nos ayuden a poner una poca luz, porque tenemos unos focos, si los pueden mirar allá, hay unos focos y hay otros en aquel lado, allá donde para el bus sí prende. Pero estos se apagan aquí, y este es el transcurso del que me hablo yo. Cuando los niños vienen caminando, está oscuro. Nosotros hemos llegado hasta el momento al grado de hacer nuestras propias luces, nuestros propios inventos como podamos, que no son adecuados, pero tenemos que intentarlo, tenemos que hacer algo. Quiero enseñar aquí, mostrarles a ustedes un poco de lo que nosotros hemos hecho para que los niños puedan tener algo más de luz. ¿Y qué podemos hacer al respecto? Necesitamos que ustedes nos ayuden y nos apoyen para que no tengamos que hacer tipo de cosas que son como en México hacemos. Al ahí te va, al apúrate, haz algo al respecto, porque no hay nada que nos ayude ahorita. Está muy oscuro. Esta luz que está aquí se apaga siempre, si la pueden mirar, ahí está, siempre se apaga, aquí está oscuro, y ahí está la luz donde podemos ver claramente que un reflector para que podamos alusar este área, para que puedan venir los niños. Por aquel lado está otro foco que pusimos igual. So, necesitamos de su ayuda, necesitamos ver qué podemos hacer para hacer esto posible. Gracias por su comprensión.
He's my hero. So tell me about that one. Well, what did you notice about this one that maybe was same, different, whatever from the other one?
I like how it was, I guess like simple, or like it seemed like a video that like it didn't look too hard because it was mainly just a walk. It was a walk through the street. You know, he very much told a story about it as you were walking. So I think like the other one, you know, you can do a lot of video editing, but I guess you can also, it just showed that it doesn't have to also be too complicated, and you can still get the message across pretty well. So I think that's what I liked about it. It's just that he didn't overcomplicate it, and it was still able to really get across like the conditions of the street. So I did enjoy that.
Anyone else want to share?
This one seemed a lot more specific too. It wasn't about just giving the general idea of like what the street was like, but also like, hey, we need more light. Like, what are you gonna do about it? Like, we need you to do like this. Like, it had more of an ask, you know.
Yeah.
So it was the other one was like showing, and this one was like showing and then like telling you like this is what you need to do.
Yeah. So, Doreen, I don't know if you wanted to share.
Yeah. I was just thinking that everybody has like, everybody knows their own neighborhood, right? Everybody knows their own route. So everybody has an opinion on what could be better. And I think like this form of documentation or like walk assessments are very useful. And a lot of people may think it's just like a very formal, and so it like deters them, or you know, they've never heard of it. But with this kind of training or workshop, I feel like people would be able to voice themselves a little more if they were given the environment to do so. Because like, you know, this guy's asking for better streetlights for the children when they get out of school, and you know, like, duh, that should be there. And so instead of like using your own resources, I think, you know, a lot of times the city or any city you live in should be providing that. So that's just what it made me think about.
Yeah. So, I think what stood out to me about this one was actually what was for sure what Alma said, which was this one was showing and asking. In the end, he keeps saying like, ayúdenos, help us, like we need you, we need your help. And then the other thing another reason why I chose that one too to show with you all was because I wanted you to see that he had a little microphone. And just to kind of show you that clearly in my little list of things that you need, I was like, oh, a smartphone is enough, right? But which I would say it is, but I could see in some situations, like if you all had the capacity to have headphones, microphones, you know, that kind of a thing, that's something that you could also include. And I should have read the description of it initially, but it's a resident exposes the challenges. Let me share my screen. A resident exposes the challenges created by the lack of lighting in his neighborhood, particularly for children, and demonstrates the desperate measures that residents have resorted to in their effort to improve lighting. And they made this video in support of the Eastern Coachella Valley Regional Mobility Plan. So that's how, you know, clearly in this one, there's more of an ask, because you could see this. They really did have an intention. This was included as a part of, you know, feedback information for this regional mobility plan. I'm going to share with you one last one. Can I zoom in? One last one, and I want to say that almost all of you are familiar with this one. So through our Focus Cities work with KidWorks last year, Garrett and I worked with KidWorks to help them develop a essentially photo voice. So it's not a video like the two that we saw, it's a photo voice. This was not what we had expected would come of it, but it ended up being like amazing in like the best way possible. What the youth decided to do, which again wasn't initially the intent, but what the youth decided to do was to all work together. Our initial proposal was that they kind of team up into groups and come up with one photo voice project, and instead they decided to make an analysis of the entire city of Santa Ana from their perspective on 3 specific issues, and they made it all nice and beautiful. And then we were able to present this to both elected officials and agency staff in the city of Santa Ana. I want to say in October. So this is simple. A photo voice could literally mean you take a picture of something. In this instance, we're talking about pedestrian safety, you know, walkability, bikeability, and bike safety, right? So in this instance, the youth decided to note this. It's a bus stop, and you can pretty clearly see that. And then they note here the street and the zip code, because they had an entire thing about zip codes in the beginning of their presentation. And then they noted here what schools are around this site to give us more information, right? To kind of let us know how important this is. And then they told us what's the issue. There's no shade on bus stops. And then they told us how they feel about it. All right here. And let's read it together. When there are no structures or buildings or streets to provide shelter, people waiting for the bus have to improvise to avoid the sun rays and the rain. Sitting in the sun is not fun. It makes people feel uncomfortable because it causes them to sweat. And not to mention the crowding of people waiting for the bus also increases the temperature, which makes it way more uncomfortable. This was before COVID. Rain, or was it? No, it wasn't. This was already during COVID. Rain forces people who use active transportation like walking, skating, and cycling to use the bus because the streets become dangerous due to the streets maybe becoming slippery. And without the shelters, it gets both the person and the transportation source wet. So again, I also wanted to share this with you because I would say this is even more simple than, for some reason, I think taking a video is harder. Maybe that's just me. Maybe that's just the way I am. But if you all wanted to do maybe something that could take less effort, perhaps, but nevertheless, I think still be really important and document the information, you could do a photo voice. I actually think this is the end of my presentation. The next part is to brainstorm your own video and photo voice project. But before we go on to there, did you all have any questions while I'm still here?
Yeah, one about, I think you responded about this before, but I was wondering if it has to be virtual or if it can be in person, since it's a group of 5 people. If we could try to like meet up on a weekend with the students and try to be as socially distant as we can.
I would say that's kind of up to you. You're in Orange County. Orange County has probably been in the yellow tier for a while, right? Sally County just hit the yellow tier. All that to say that if you all are prepared to like provide extra masks if you need to, maybe some hand sanitizer, and you are mostly outside and still doing the 6 feet, I would say that that's fine. And I'm sorry if I didn't answer that question earlier, Dorian. I apologize, but I would say, yeah, it does not have to be virtual if you think, you know, you can still abide by, you know, public health orders during COVID.
Okay, yeah, I think that would be easier because the school year is about to end and we barely had our first club meeting, and it feels like like this might be too much because we're at the moment we're meeting during their lunch break, which is from 1 to 1:15. I feel like maybe it's too much information for them to try to do it during their lunch, so it would have to be on a weekend. So, okay, I'll talk to them about that instead of doing it virtually. I think in person might be better.
Mhm.
Question about the virtual. You said that all the group did it kind of all together. Did they just like go on Google Maps and just like tour the city, or did they decide on specific areas? How did they kind of even come up with the topics? I'm curious of like what developed there.
So
The
this
common thread.
this is my understanding. We did know that we wanted it to be safe routes to school focused. So we had given KidWorks direction around like what are the routes that students walk, bike, or scoot to and from school. And within that, it just kind of on their own naturally became more than just sidewalks, right? And it became about healthy food. It became about empty lots. It became about trash. And I would say that once Maria from KidWorks was started to kind of share that evolution with me and Garrett, we were like, yeah, like absolutely. And it was something that KidWorks was already meeting with this group of youth. I want to say, I don't know, what was it, Garrett? Like maybe every 2 weeks anyway, virtually. So they already had that space. No, they didn't have to create a space. So there was kind of already a natural virtual working group. And so they all just decided, you know what, let's just all work on it together. So it felt more natural. I don't know, Garrett, if you remember anything that I might have missed.
Yeah, no, I think that's all right. And I wanted to add that my understanding is they took almost all of those pictures themselves. I mean, a lot of them are pretty clearly taken because they're like from the sidewalk.
Yeah.
So they're great, like along the sidewalk view, or a picture of like a very detailed, specific picture, which you can't really get from Google Maps, right? Which is just like the cars that are moving through traffic. And then if they used Google Slides to sort of collaborate and put it all together, right? And so it sort of was a natural, like they're already meeting, they're already all online, they all have photos, they can just sort of dump them into Google Slides, and then they can work on the Google Slides like at their meetings, which is my understanding is that's when most of the work occurred.
Yeah.
So
and then it became a whole presentation.
Mm-hmm. Right, and so then it gets sort of stitched together over time. But yeah, that was my understanding. Is maybe it was a bit of a specific sort of set of occurrences, but it does show the way that this thing can sort of occur sort of organically in a virtual setting. Though obviously with video it'd be different, right? Because video, I think most of the videos, we didn't really say this, but this is sort of implicit as well. I think a lot of the videos are really more personal, oftentimes. Whereas like the photo voice in this case was really collaborative.
Does that answer your question, Chris? Yeah. I want to say that the MOU says we want 5. Please correct me if I'm wrong. That we want 5 photo video voices from youth. If you're seeing that, I would say if you're seeing that it would become more of a shared project or something, I think that's just something that you would need to communicate to Alma and Garrett right away so that they can kind of determine, you know, is this okay, is it not okay, and you know, how can, or do we need to amend the MOU, that type of thing. So Dorian is saying we met in person and we had a piece of paper where they write their thoughts on the street. Could we make the Google slide from their documentation, or do they have to create it themselves? No, you could do it. I think what matters is that it's their perspective. And I think this is what you're saying. You've captured their perspectives already. If you wanted to put it all together, that makes sense to me. I think that's what you're asking, right, Dorian?
Yeah.
Yeah, because what matters is that it's their perspective, that it's from their point of view, that it's essentially their story. Now, if you aid in putting it all together, that's okay. We just want to make sure it's their voice being heard through that.
Yeah. Because what is it? It's like their observation, there can be something interpreted in that, and that can help as facilitators to kind of tease it out, like, oh, like, hey, you saw that, what did you mean about that? So it's almost like a psychology of sorts of like, what was the observation? Where was that observation from? So, because yeah, that I can imagine that initial observation that they have, maybe it might need some assistance, and with our kind of knowledge of how the street functions, all those things, we can ask the right questions.
Yeah, like you can ask follow-up questions for sure, like, well, what does that mean to you? Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I have to go. You will now do some brainstorming with Alma. Thank you all. Happy Friday.
Bye, Caro. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
She's so fast. She's like, all right, I gotta go by. So in this next part, we're just gonna be like brainstorming around ideas and different things that that we could be doing for the photo video voice, especially as it relates to the MOU. And if there are any additional questions, I think we're already brainstorming right now. So just talking through like what that could look like and how to best support y'all. So I don't know if you'll have any more questions.
Is it either or is it both for video and voice? I mean, photo and video.
I think that you can mix it up if you would want to. It's really up to you. And if there's like a specific area where just the picture doesn't do it justice, being able to get the video, or if there's other places where, it's just like having that picture, that's fine. It's really up to you. I know the one in Santana was all photos. The one from KidWorks was all photo, and sometimes people do all video, but I think that's really up to you on how y'all might want to do that.
I was curious if, so if it does come to it and we do something during our club meeting, which is a short meeting, could we do like another walk assessment with youth, but on a different day? Does it matter? Does it have to be all the same day? Just say we do get some students who can come in person and some who can't. So can it be both, like different days?
Yeah, you can do it. I mean, you could even like space it out, right? Like if you, in one meeting, you want to give the training around like what's a photo video voice, and sort of like assign something so that people bring it in the next meeting, and then like sort of do that development that Chris was talking about. Like, are folks back in school for you in Santana?
Some schools, not all of the schools.
Oh, okay. The school that you're working with in Santa Ana High School, right?
Yeah, they're still virtual.
Oh, okay. But if they live in the neighborhood, if you want to ask them, like, all right, as you're taking your walk or doing something, like if you want to take a picture and like bring it back, and then share like a concern, and then kind of like workshop it in the meeting so that you're putting something together as it's going, and it doesn't have to be like all at once or like a big old thing at the end. You can start doing it in pieces together.
Okay.
And I think that's pretty similar to what KidWorks did. And I don't remember exactly how long a period of time, but sort of presenting the idea, and then people start talking and thinking and sort of learning about some of the, the vocabulary or ideas like active And then, people go, walk around. Oh, now they sort of see things. Maybe next time they'll remember to take a picture. And then they develop this like zip code idea, and then they develop this like comparative framework. And so then they went back out, is my understanding, at times, some of them, and took more pictures or took different pictures. So I think it helped to, obviously keep meeting, but like it evolved over time and allowed them to like figure out, okay, this is what I want a picture of. This is what I want to say about, this picture.
And I know you're inviting folks to, you're used to the walking assessment training next Friday, and that can sort of be like that jump off point, right? If they're there and you're already talking, like one of the routes is already Santa Ana High School. And so if folks are already kind of like picking out specific concerns like in the area, you can kind of like gather themes from there, right? And so when you meet with them, develop those a little more and then kind of have that starting point with that.
I guess similar to what you did with me about the walk assessment, you think I would just ask them what's a good location to go to, right? You know, kind of getting their input. Or do you think we should just choose the location?
Either or, I would say, like if there's I feel like they'll let you know if there's a specific area, and especially if like in the walking and biking assessment or the walking assessment, it'll come out, right? Like there'll be specific corners or intersections where folks will have a lot to say, and then some other intersections that we might think are like big, but that they're like, oh no, well, we're not really going through there a lot. And so that'll kind of be highlighted a bit in like the walking assessments. And then if there's like if there's a lot and there's particular places that say like you want to highlight because you understand the street and you kind of understand like as advocates like where you can kind of like make that best case for advocacy, you know, like we were talking earlier, you know, what's going to work, what's not going to work, you can do that as well.
Okay.
I don't know, Gary, if there's any additional things you would say.
Yeah, no, I think that's all I think right. In fact, I'm sort of thinking like, yeah, I mean, if especially if folks are already sort of thinking about it, then we can sort of talk about that kind of way of looking at things during the walk assessments as well, which is like, okay, like if we were out here in person, like this is what we could take a picture of. Or you know, this is what we could take a video of. So we can already sort of like in the walk assessments potentially start like, you know, thinking of some of these things people could notice. I also want to note the importance of like sort of jogging people's memories, because oftentimes, and I think we all do this, is like we navigate the roadway, we do our thing, we walk or bike, and we experience things and then we just like tuck them away, right? Because we're busy, like we're going to the grocery store, we're doing whatever. And so I think the walk assessments sometimes and similar activities are a way for people to be like, oh, this is like an event that happened to me here, like a near miss or something, which would be really potentially really, really powerful for them to like bring to a photo voice or video voice, you know, and share through that medium. But, you know, you need to sort of jog your memory first and sort of start thinking along those lines first. Whereas like being asked straight up, like, oh, just like go take pictures of your neighborhood. They're like, well, what am I looking for? So you have to like sort of get in that mental framework first. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's really important, Gary, what you said, because you're sort of like with the photo video voice building a story, right? Of like what's happening in your community, building a story of like how people are having to navigate the streets because of how they're structured and all of those things. And so yeah, I think focusing on like if specific stories come up, wanting to kind of like build those out a little bit and be able to tell that full story either with the video or with the photos.
Okay, I think those are all my questions.
I guess I wanted to ask, like, if you could share. So, like, it sounds like all the kids just picked it up right off the bat, or the ones that you're working with youth, or even just adults. I wanted to kind of ask: was it pretty easy for them to kind of actually catch on to the activity and understand it? Just wanted to know if like anything to consider of like of how we actually present it, if there are any kind of maybe difficulties of like kind of really it sticking and kind of getting that like, oh, I'm down to do this.
Honestly, that's a really good question, and I don't have a super good answer for you because Maria, the person with KidWorks who like had this youth group and was the person sort of leading its meetings. I don't really know what she because we basically like we talked to her and sort of gave her like pointers and advice, stuff like this. But she did not invite us to those meetings with the kids until right at the end when it was pretty much finalized, which is probably good in terms of like preserving their voice. So we weren't just like giving them all the vocabulary. So I don't really know like what kind of conversations or how she was able to sort of like, whether they came up with a lot of these ideas themselves or whether she sort of like helped build up some of these ideas. I don't really know what that conversation was. I do know that, and this is when the whole pandemic was like getting, started anyway, right? Like last spring and summer, but like everybody was navigating a lot of things. And so I think that one of her roles was like keeping them like focused and on track. But then again, I think they were self-selected, I think, to have like a strong interest, and they really wanted to get out of the house. And this was a really good like reason, an interesting like different thing to do while getting out of the house.
Yeah, that was the only question I had. So, but that came to mind. But thanks, Garrett.
Yeah, I think you can always also reach out to Maria and see if she has like any additional things too that she did when she was presenting all of this stuff with the youth. But it seemed like, I mean, it's a fun activity out of all of the things that that you can do. It's a pretty fun thing for folks, and they're not. You folks are already walking. They already have their phones. Like it's really convenient too, and like folks don't have to go like super out of their way to get all this like to set it up right. It's just you're walking to I know there's a 7-Eleven by Santa Ana High School, so maybe they're like walking to 7-Eleven and they're like, oh, we talked about this, let me just and things like that. So hopefully they'll be super into it.
Yeah, and I wanted to add that I think one of the things that maybe helps like build interest or keep interest is that people can talk about, kind of whatever they want or like whatever's important to them. It's like we saw that one slide about the bus stop that didn't have a shelter, but we had slides about graffiti, as Kara said, slides about trash. So slides about how nice other areas were and like why are these areas not as nice as some other areas. So people were able to take this in like a variety of different ways depending on how they felt, which I think is one of the things that sort of built interest for people. It's not just like, okay, like tell us all about sidewalks. Well, if sidewalks aren't like a big deal for you where you're walking or riding your bike, maybe there's something else that's a big deal.
Any last questions, comments, concerns?
Dorian, you feel good about us doing this activity?
I do feel a little better about it. I think it's because at our first meeting, which was like last week, it was a little awkward. There was only 3 students and only one of them actually none of them had their camera on, and just feeling nervous about trying to engage them. But I think if I was to just kind of explain to them very briefly what this is about and seeing if they're interested in doing it on the weekend, or maybe they just take pictures on their own and then share them with us, especially because it's almost the end of the school year. I'm sure they're trying to get their finals done and this is like not their priority. But yeah, everybody has a phone, everybody walks, everybody commutes somewhere, right? So in that sense, it doesn't seem like it would be that hard. But yeah, if it's not completely 5 students from the Santa Ana High School, I think there's other youth we could reach out to and see, you know, kind of connect with them. Like I know one high schooler, so maybe I could convince her. But yeah, I do feel a little better about this.
That's good. And you can always reach out to us too if you like need additional like examples or additional support in kind of like framing it. And we can also connect you with Maria if y'all aren't already connected to kind of get some tips and tricks from her as well. Since she's working more directly with youth all the time, she has a lot of tips and tricks on that too, and keeping them engaged and all that stuff. So, but yeah, let us know, and we're here to support.
Thanks.
Yeah. Well, that's it on our end. I don't know if that good. Yay. Alrighty, y'all. It's Friday. Have a good weekend. Get some rest. And
All
we'll
right.
soon.
Were you able to ride your bike last time?
I did it. I was thinking about that while I was walking the other day, and I was like, damn, I promised 3 bike rides and I didn't even do one. But I'm gonna continue doing those.
And Garrett, what did you make with your cauliflower?
Oh, I actually made, yeah, no, I don't ever have a word for anything I make, but I made it and it was good enough that I recognized what I did wrong, bought similar ingredients and cooked things in a slightly different way and made it an even better one. And it was like spicy, like cauliflower stir fry, with like beans and cheese. I don't know. It was so good though that I like went and like did it even better immediately again. So it was good.
That's good.
I'd forgotten that's even what I'd shared. I was like, wait, what did I promise to walk someplace?
Oh, it's because Chris, last time we met up and we all shared what we're looking forward to in the weekend. And Alma said she was gonna ride her bike, and Garrett said he had only a cauliflower in the fridge. So
How was Vegas? Did you go wild?
Yeah.
no, actually, you know, I'm proud of myself. I was not hungover, but it was actually pretty crowded in some areas.